So, it's Pride Month, a celebration of the gay liberation movement, hence the outfit, which began in New York City, Greenwich Village to be precise, on June the 28th, 1969, at a little bar called the Stonewall Inn. And I wish we could spend this time celebrating joy and love and sequins and glitter and how story time has been fabularized by the addition of drag queens. But instead, we need to talk about this. A group that didn't just spread hate, they institutionalized it. A cult that turned picket signs into scripture. A family that raised their children to sing and chant slogans so vile, YouTube gets grumpy if I even try to show them here. They spewed their hate in front of government buildings, law offices, businesses, schools, at funerals. They even took their hate to national daytime television.
I am a Bible preacher, remember, 46 years.
I'm well aware.
I use Bible words, and I cite you Amos 4:11. I've overthrown some of you as God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, and you were as a plucked from the burning.
And as much as I'd love to ignore them, it's Pride Month, and this is a live stream called Hate. So in the immortal words of Hell 9000,
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
welcome to Hate, and welcome to the Westboro Brimstone cult. This show dives into brutal, often deeply queerphobic crimes, and we don't water anything down. If graphic violence, systemic injustice, or hearing the truth about homophobia makes you uncomfortable, consider this your cue to know about now. And if you're here to troll, moralize, or defend bigotry in any form, log off, go touch some grass, and maybe rethink your life choices. For everyone else, get comfy and let's tell the stories the world tried to bury. And here we are. Hey folks, I'm AJ, and welcome to another live stream. A bit different this time. I'm having you co-host. This is Pauline, and Pauline is a cult expert. And as I said in the intro, it's Pride Month, so we felt we would address a cult theme for the next two episodes. And Pauline has covered Westboro before, and I thought that was a perfect conversation to have with her. So, how you doing?
Good.
Nervous? Don't worry. My first time on camera was absolutely nerve-wracking. I was literally shaking like a leaf. So, oh, I know. I didn't think we were seeing that close. We're close to the beginning. So yes, what is it about Westboro that fascinated you?
I think the amount of hate that one person can have, and then also like get other people to believe in that hate and feel that hate and spread that hate, and like I don't know how you live with all of that hate in your heart. No problem.
Sorry about that.
That's fine. So fine.
We are working on sound.
Is that me?
so let's see if that works. The typing they heard, but they didn't hear. They're not hearing the. Okay, can you hear us now? Just let us know in the comments.
Nothing.
I could hear NJ better then. Okay, still no sound from another streamer.
From me?
I know.
Well, this is fun.
Okay, we're just going to. Oh, there we are. We have. Okay, so True Crime South Africa says they can hear me. I can hear you. I can hear both of you now. Sharon, can you hear us in the comments? Just let us know in the comments.
Thank you.
Okay, and I just got a message on my phone saying they can hear us. So yes, let's try that again.
Hi.
Okay, so welcome, Pauline.
Hi.
And you are a cult expert.
Sure.
I'm gonna call you an expert, even though you say you're not.
Sure.
But let's discuss first impressions of Westboro. What fascinated you about Westboro?
The fact that one person can have so much hate and then point it towards something and carry that basically his whole life. And then not only that, but like influence a whole community, albeit his family for the most part, to carry that hate and carry on with that hate. And it's just like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. And then obviously I'm incredibly fascinated with cults and the cult-like sections. You know, that's my jam. So, yeah, no, it was just the rhetoric that this guy spoke towards, which we'll get into.
Yes.
It was just it's mind-blowing, all the things that they did and how far they take these things. And I don't know if there's no like self-reflection or I don't know, speaking to other people and getting to know their points of view. It just, yeah.
I must say, I was fascinated by, with Westboro because of the anti-gay rhetoric, but I never actually thought of it as a cult until you put out the episode and I went, wait, okay, I see it now. We may as well dive in and let's look at the start. Now, according to what I've seen, he was a civil rights attorney.
Yes. So again,
Fred Phelps, I'm talking about.
Sorry. So Fred Phelps was the leader, for lack of a better term, of the Westboro Baptist Church. And he did many things throughout his life. And one of these, he studied like engineering and he became a minister at like 17 and he was baptized in a river and like he had this whole life. And then he became very much involved in the civil rights. So especially during that time where the African Americans had a sit-in and then they were arrested and he would go and fight for these causes. So outwardly, great guy, like fighting the good fight, being there for the underdog and all of those things. But then in the background, when he's in his church and he's busy speaking to his congregation, then it's like a whole other story.
That's interesting. Okay, I've watched more interviews with Fred fucking Phelps than I actually care to know in the past 2 weeks, and one thing that I always got a vibe that was that he was never untruthful.
Correct.
He never lied, and he was very forthright about how he felt, who he was. So the amount of stories on Reddit and all that about, oh no, he was this and he was that, and I just don't get it. Do you agree with that? That he was upstanding in a fucked up way?
Yes, he had his version of a moral compass. So this is what I think is right, and one of those happens to be not to lie. So where he felt very strongly about something, he would go for it and not put up pretenses and stuff.
Okay, so how do you go from fighting defending civil rights cases to whatever the fuck Westboro became? How do you? That's what I don't understand. Is what was he just doing the law thing for the money?
Probably. I think he's a very complicated man, not in a great way. So he was this lawyer, and he was a civil rights lawyer, and part of the culty aspect is like he was very controlling over his family. So he had made his family all become lawyers. So like you had to be a lawyer, and if you happened to get a spouse, your spouse had to become a lawyer. And he set up this law firm. And I think he in the church, when he was preaching from early days, he was very anti-homosexual, anti-Semitic, anti-everything. And he was one of those cult leaders, like all of the cult leaders, where it's basically like, my message is the right message. Only through me can you get to heaven, or whatever the case may be. So what happened was he got into a fight with a court secretary.
Yeah.
And he basically almost took her out on the stand. And he sued her. But then things went really, really wrong for Fred, which is also a bit of a story of his life. Because it's self-inflicted, right?
Yes.
So then there were a couple of things that led to him being, first, he was barred from doing state law, and then he was barred from doing federal law.
Okay.
So now you've got this guy who's got this huge chip on his shoulder that's used to doing all this fighting, and can I tell the story of kind of where?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So he loses all of this fight, and he can't practice law anymore, and he loves the sound of his own voice and arguing.
I have a question on
Yes.
I heard that his disbarment was basically to stop some of his children from being disbarred. I don't know how. I could only ever find one source on that. So, do you know anything about that?
Yes, I only also found one source. So it was basically, you stop completely, and then we'll let your. It was a son, a daughter, because he had like 13 children. So it was one of his sons, one of his daughters, and two of his daughters-in-law that basically they said, okay, we're going to put these guys on suspension. Some of them were suspended for 6 months. Some of them were suspended for a year. I can't remember which. And then they said to him, but you cannot practice law anymore. Like, it's end of the road for you. So, yeah. So what he did was he started, so the Westboro Baptist Church, it was first the Easttown Baptist Church, and then as the church grew, they made another congregation on the other side of town, and they called that the Westboro Baptist Church.
Okay.
And then the church leaders asked Fred to go run this side of the church. And these churches are based in Topeka in Kansas.
Okay.
And in Topeka, there's this park called Gage Park.
Yeah.
Now, before we get to the rest of the Fred story, can you fill in what it was like for gay people back then to be able to actually be together, or see each other.
Okay, so because it was so up until 1969, there wasn't anything much of a gay liberation movement.
Correct.
And what happened a lot is the bars and clubs would be bought by the mob, and they would then allow homosexuals to frequent the bars, because if memory serves, in New York, there was a law that said you may not serve alcohol to a homosexual.
Yes.
So then the mob would go, it's fine, you can have that. But they would charge exorbitant prices, and police raids weren't really stopped. There would be warnings, but they weren't really stopped. And because, yeah, well, America. Anyway, and so you didn't really have much place to go. You usually were in the closet. Either you were married or you were with you were very, very hidden from that side of aspect of your life. So you would then go to cruising spots. Now, Gage Park was one of those.
Correct.
So basically what happened is you would walk through the park, and if you saw someone you liked, then a look would be exchanged, and then you would disappear off into the woods and have the fun that you wanted to have that you can't have at home.
Correct.
And from what I know, Fred did not like this.
No. Okay, because Uncle Fred did not like the super evil homosexuals, because
Yes.
you spew fire out of your eyes and blood out of your ears and all that stuff. So what happened was, the one day Fred was busy cycling with his grandson up and down the park, and what Fred liked to do was he'd cycle a little bit ahead and then come back, and cycle a little bit ahead and come back. And one of these points, two men, story according to Fred,
Yes.
these two guys walked up and tried to solicit his teeny tiny little grandson. My opinion, the guys probably just walked past.
Mm-hmm.
But now Fred was in that phase where he's not practicing law anymore. He's got this gap in his life. So what can he fill this gap with? The evil gays. And that's kind of how it started. So we'll get to the picketing stuff. He started writing to the local council, and he started telling them, listen, you need to clean up Gage Park. And they started this whole clean up Gage Park thing. And he became quite zealous in his drive to clean up Gage Park and get rid of the evil gays. And then he started picketing. So what's funny is, back then, originally when you picketed, you'll have people with these little posters walking in a circle. And they picketed Gage Park so much in the one section that they actually walked a hole into the grass, and there was no grass where they were walking in this little circle. So that's how Fred became the anti-gay guy.
Wow. Well, I have to admit that I was a little distracted, because apparently Fred's in the comments. We just got a comment in the same way. Homosexuality is indeed a sinful addiction, but those enslaved to it need deliverance, not condemnation. So, hi, Fred. But anywho, I'm not even going to waste my time with that.
No.
Okay, so let's talk on the church itself. It's, as you say, Fred had 13 children. Now, as far as I know, not all of them are in the church. Let's talk through what you know about the kids that left.
Okay. So I cannot remember the order in which the kids are. I'm really sorry.
It's fine.
So first of all, I think it was the second eldest son decided that he wasn't going to have this anymore. So he short-lifted out of there, I think when he turned 19, and he went on to speak to media and turn his life around, and he's actually a gay activist now. Not gay, but an ally.
Okay.
And then there is the one sister who kind of escaped.
That's the one who changed her name.
Yes.
She ended up changing her name to something Bird, I think it was, because she managed to fly away. I saw that and I thought, that's cool. Awesome. I dig that. Yes. I dig that.
Yeah, and then a little further down the line, there's so Fred's fifth child, Shirley Phelps Roper.
Mm-hmm.
She was kind of being groomed to be second in line of running the church and stuff, so taking over the admin stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And her daughter, Megan, who was very involved in the church, also left.
Mm.
And then there's Steve Drain. I don't know if we're going to cover him
a
bit later.
We are going to be covering him.
His daughter also escaped. So those are the ones I can remember.
Okay. So you brought up Shirley.
Yes.
Now, I want to actually discuss Shirley because she's an interesting character. We don't have Amy working in the control room tonight. We have my daughter Jade. So I'm going to ask Jade to please put up the Shirley video for us.
So these are your signs. You've got God hates fags here.
And God hates you. Just don't think of fags as just those guys who are taking it up the tailpipe. Think of it as people who are involved in some perverted sex act. And I'm talking about anything other than one man, one woman in their marriage bed.
So beneath that, are there gradations of iniquity, as it were?
If you see a nation or a people who have risen up with one voice to say that it's okay to be gay, you're looking at a doomed people. Those people have crossed the line. When you say gay pride, you obviously have given over any trace or any notion that you're going to admit that you're sinning. You understand that, don't you? It's okay to be gay. It's an innocent alternate lifestyle.
That's what I believe.
Well, then you can't say, then you believe that it's not a sin.
Yes.
And so you condemn yourself, because by your words are you justified, and by your words are you condemned.
But am I right in thinking, though, that you know that Jesus actually wasn't a big thing for him? He had other priorities rather than homosexuality. And it's not one of the 10 Commandments, is it?
Yes.
Which one?
Thou shalt not commit adultery.
That's not being gay. It's cheating on someone.
The streets of this nation are full of married men having fag sex. That's adultery. So don't try to pretend that you don't come under the umbrella of adultery just because you're a fag. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey,
Hi.
This is Gabriel.
How do you do?
Go put your stuff away. And Grace.
How do you do?
This is Grace.
Hi.
So YouTube's gonna love this video. Slurs are one of the things that YouTube says, don't do that. Just don't do that. But in our defense, it's not us.
We didn't say it.
And I just want to highlight the bigotry. And I didn't actually expect the comments to turn into this. But it's to be expected. I have So we have some champions in the chat, and thanks guys. I'm gonna let you deal with him. So this Shirley is a bit of a firebrand. She's running. She's basically running the day to day, and she is pushing the narrative of, fog's bad.
Fog's bad.
We'll go with fog's bad. But I couldn't help notice in the video, she has young children.
Yes.
Well, that stage, because that's from Louis Theroux's The Most Hated Family in America, which came out in 2007.
Yes.
So they were young then. They are mostly well, it's many years since then. And I actually want to get into the indoctrination of children later, but is this a thing with cults?
Yes. So, okay, so there's a couple of ways you never join a cult. You don't wake up and go, hey, it's Tuesday, let's join a cult. It's not how it works. There's different levels. So as a young adult or an adult or whatever the case may be, you may be searching for something, or you have a certain way of thinking, or you're in a place in your life where something might influence you. So then you go and meet a guru, a priest, a yogi, whatever. And this person says something that clicks in your head, and you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I want to learn a bit more about this. And then you go. And also in cults, it's not like immediately, thou shalt not eat, thou shalt not sleep, thou shalt bow down to my awesomeness. What happens is they love bomb you at the start. So like, oh my God, welcome. Love you so much. It's so great to be here. Look at us. We're all happy. Come live on our compound. Come see we're growing our fruit. Those kind of things. So it's very slowly. Then what happens is they speak some semblance of the truth that you're seeking, but then they throw in something weird. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'm not very comfortable with that, but everything else is fine, so I'll carry on with that. And then it's the next thing and the next thing. And then slowly but surely your thinking starts going. And then what they do is they start, which is strange because it's not exactly Westboro's way, but I'll get to that. But they start clamping down on what you can read, what you can watch, what you can, who you can speak to, who you can't speak to, who you can sleep with, all of these things. So then it completely closes down your world to just their teachings. And that's how you become indoctrinated. But in Shirley's case, in those kids' cases, they are raised within that. So this is what I know from birth. I'm getting raised within this group. I have no outside influence, plus all I know all day. So I don't know that what they're saying is right or wrong. I don't have any other outside influence or life experience to be able to discern for myself. This is how I was raised. This is what I know. So it's a little bit different for kids raised in the cult. Some of them still have that this doesn't feel right feeling, but for the most part, they don't know any different because that's all they know.
Okay, I do want to get into Megan Phelps Roper's leaving of Westboro next time.
Yeah.
Because I do want to actually go into that a lot more, and I think we may run out of time today.
Sure.
However, I think what we need to what I just don't understand is you mentioned that Westboro is, and I think this is why I didn't think Westboro was a cult, because they didn't withdraw. from the world.
No.
They had an active social media presence. They were, I think at one stage I saw Fred was bragging about 40 protests per week or something stupid at one stage. They were doing 40 different pickets a week. And I'm like, where do you find the freaking time? You say you're lawyers, but where the hell do you find the time to do that many protests all the time? And then, like I said, still be a cult.
So, although they were out in the world,
Mm-hmm.
they could only hang out with each other. So, if the kids went to school, you could only speak to your brothers and sisters and community. Okay, so Westboro Baptist Church was a congregation, and then Fred started preaching his preachers, which you've seen a couple that are great. So what happened was a lot of the congregation left, and the Phelps family, which is substantial, and then 2 other families stayed behind because they were like all gung-ho Fred's teachings. So it was a very small group of people that he had control over. The other thing was that they had Bible study every morning. You had to be involved in the church. So whatever quote unquote spare time you had, you were completely involved in the church, in the teachings, in whatever the activities were, all of those kind of things. So yes, you had some form of outside influence, but in a very closed off way. I can go to school, like for example, we know that the Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't celebrate birthdays or Christmases or things. So those children will then, if they're celebrating something in a class, go sit in another class or the library or whatever. It was exactly the same with the Westboro children. So if they celebrated a Easter, a Christmas, a birthday, anything festive that happened in school, they would need to either leave the class and sit outside the class or go sit in the library, because they were like, this is what he said, that Christmas isn't mentioned in the Bible, so we don't celebrate that. Easter isn't mentioned in the Bible. The Easter bunny is from the devil. We don't celebrate that. Like those kind of things. So yes, they were out there, but they were still very much involved in the church and indoctrinated to a degree that outside influences didn't bother them. The other thing that's interesting about cults is that what the leaders do, well, most of them, is that they're like, okay, we are good, outside's bad. If you stay with us, you are safe. If you leave the property or put a toe out of line, lightning's going to strike you. So they believe it so intensely that they are worried that if I'm going to put a toe out of line, or if I think a bad thought even, that they're going to go to hell. And that's the one thing that everyone is afraid of, is this very scary hell where everyone's going to burn and your soul's going to burn and all of that stuff. So that's how they kind of keep them in check. It's brainwashing is not the right term, because it's complete indoctrination. And if you can get them from young and everything else is bad, then you got them.
Yes. So let's talk about the daytime TV circuit, because Fred went to town a bit, and he was on Jerry Springer, he was on Phil Donahue, and he was on Ricki Lake, and I stopped trying to figure out where he was on after that, because I just, we were running over. I was thinking, am I going to have to watch all of this? But do you know how he was received on these daytime television shows, excluding Ricki, because we're going to get into that one? But do you know how he was received? How he was received?
Look, daytime television back then, to a degree now, was all about the how do we put it in today's terms? Clickbait. Okay, so you're gonna get more viewers if you get a more controversial person on. And as Fred became more popular, is the terrible word, as he became more known in the media with all of his picketing and all of that stuff, and when he hit national news after the Schneider incident, everyone was kind of wanting to understand this guy, and it's daytime TV, obviously. And Jerry Springer, come on. So the more sensational guest you have, the more viewers you're going to get, and the worse the interview turns out, the more views you're going to get. And I think that was the draw for them, is let's try and get this guy on and see what happens, because they know it's going to go south quickly.
You mentioned the Schneider incident. Please explain that. What was that all about?
So there was a young man. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I just went blank.
It's all
Okay,
good.
Mark Schneider.
Okay.
Yes, correct. Okay, and he.
It's YouTube, it's not the BBC.
Our mantra for the day.
There you go.
He was unalived because he was gay. And what happened was he was unalived by white supremacists. And his story became a very big publicized thing. And his demise, as well as another gentleman who was killed because he was African American, led to some activism that actually brought in a law in America that said that you cannot hate because of creed, color, sexual orientation, and all the good things. So that's basically what happened.
Okay. So we have a question in the comments. I just want to see if this is going to work. Yes, out of curiosity, what is the membership count of Westboro currently?
50, I would say. I think, okay, so there's a couple of people that have left since COVID, but before COVID, I would say there were around between 80 and 100 people, depending on how many babies there were. Because, I mean, Fred had 58 grandchildren.
Jesus. Okay.
So because the teaching is that the womb's business is God's business. So no protection, no the pills, all the things. So none of that. So you couldn't use any of that. Obviously, you can only have relations within your marriage between your husband and your wife. But the kicker there is there were so many girls, and because it was just 3 families, they were running out of guys. So you had to stay in your parents' house for as long as you were unwed.
Wow.
Correct.
I do remember. I do recall from the clip I showed earlier that they consider anything that isn't one man, one woman, one bed, one marriage, that is, let's go with fog.
Yes.
And Louis asked in that interview, but it's not in the Bible. And she goes, no, it falls under the commandment of thou shalt not commit adultery. And he meant, but that has nothing to do with homosexuals. Is this normal that that cults, religious cults, will redefine the Bible?
Yes. So what these cult leaders love to do is they'll go, I read the Bible and I now understand the true message of the Bible.
Praise the Lord. Yes, I understand.
And then they will use their interpretation of the Bible to get their doctrine across. So yes, it's a very common thing, especially, well, in all the religious cults, that it's my interpretation of the Bible and how I see it.
Okay. Let's move on. I'm trying to see what I have what videos I have queued up, but I think I want to dive into the Ricki thing, because we are running low on time, and I do want to wrap this up in an hour. Jay, if you just play the Ricki video, please. After Fred Phelps died, Ricki Lake tweeted that she'd thrown him off her show back in 1993, after he told her that she worshipped her rectum. It made the rounds. It was shared, applauded, reported on in the press. It felt good to hear that somebody actually stood up to him. The claim made it all the way to Wikipedia. But here's the thing. It's false. It never fucking happened. At least not like she said it did. Let's roll the tape.
You're preaching hate.
Of course I'm
Because
preaching
your
hate.
obsession with this must come with something that's going on in your mind.
What do you think it is?
A major
don't
closet
believe in
case
hell.
is what I think.
You don't believe in hell. A lot of fags don't believe in hell, you know. A lot
Charles
of
is
fags
grinning.
don't
Charles
believe
is
in
having
hell.
a great time. Charles, I want to hear how you feel. Well, you think God is an angry God. Why?
Well, because the Bible is full of verses which state exactly that.
My God is a loving, compassionate
You don't
God.
worship the one and true living God. Let me tell you what God you worship. You worship your. That's what you worship. You worship your and you vote your and you talk to them. That's what you worship.
You're speaking to me?
That's Philippians 3:19.
That's right.
You are
That's
totally
every one
out of
of you.
line. Oh, you are completely offensive, yes.
You see? That line didn't come from Fred. It came from Charles, Fred's future son-in-law. Fred barely reacts. Ricki keeps her composure. She doesn't kick anyone out. She moves on, like a pro.
That's right.
You are
That's every
totally
one
out of
of you.
line. Oh, you are completely offensive, yes.
The two men stayed for 6 more minutes, long enough to verbally attack multiple guests.
And I'm a person living with AIDS, and so, you know, someday that might be my service. That
Well, you're going to
outside
hell, my friend, and I
picketing.
can smell the brimstone.
What do you
I
think when he
can
says
smell
that
the
to you?
brimstone in this room now.
Including Mary Griffiths, whose son Bobby died by suicide, due in no small part to her religious intolerance. When Mary confused two biblical names, Fred lost it. Not because of scripture, but because somebody challenged his authority. She didn't back down.
I recently read a statement by Bob Barker, Freedom from Religion. I'm not condoning that. It said that if no one had ever challenged religious authority and the scriptures, there would be no democracy, there would be no public schools, there would be no women's rights, wait a minute. Pursuit of science and medicine.
And if you're going to go to hell, don't blame Bob Barker pretending you lied.
And
You know better.
Just let me have my say, please. There would be no pursuit of science or medicine. And my favorite that I added myself, there would be no laws against child abuse. And if you turn to the Old Testament in 2 Kings chapter 1, verses 23-24, you will find out that the prophet Elijah, because some little children teased him about his bald head, he called 2 female bears from the woods
Lying
to devour,
on the Bible.
to devour,
Lying on the Bible.
No, I'm not, to devour those
Elisha
children.
it was, not Elijah, and he
I
didn't
said
call
the
for the
prophet-
bears, my
Excuse
dear.
me,
Not
Reverend.
with me.
God,
But
you
you
have
shouldn't
the right.
misquote Scripture,
not. It's
and you
Elisha.
shouldn't lie
Excuse me.
on God.
And that's when Ricki delivered this.
Hello,
Wait a minute.
excuse me.
Elisha,
You may be a
Elisha.
reverend, but this is still my show.
It was the
Well, it's your show, and I'm leaving.
And that was that. Fred storms off, dragging his toxic chihuahua behind him. Considering what he would later say about female preachers, which we're not going to get into now, I have no doubt that at least part of his ire was at the fact that he wasn't getting the respect he deserved. And from a woman, no less. Small, sad, weak little man. Now, to be fair, Ricki did leave the stage at one point. According to the Baltimore Sun, during a break, she told the producers, "Don't send me back out there." But she did go back. And she didn't eject them. She kept the damn show on the rails. That's not weakness. That's composure under fire.
Okay, let's go backstage now for some excerpts of her conversation with Reverend Phelps as he explains why he walked off.
I'm reasonable. I'll listen as long as it's reasonable. But when it's time now, she wanted to talk another 15 minutes. This is give and take stuff. It's bantering stuff. That's what nature of the beast. I've been on lots of these things. I'm not new at this.
I know.
Well, if you want to just let these people sit out there and talk for 7 minutes, and then us talk for 7 minutes, I thought this was banter, and that's where excitement and ratings come from. Yeah, and I only do this because I think I've got a message that this world ought to hear, and I'm willing to put up with all kinds of stuff. We've been assaulted and battered over 700 times, you know. So if you've got security here, some of those people look very dangerous to me.
When Fred came back, he wasn't humbled. He wasn't repentant. He doubled down.
Hi, we're back. We've had a talk. We've talked things out, and we're going to give everybody equal opportunity to speak. Reverend, you wanted to respond to what Mary was saying, please, briefly.
Well, is it Mary you say?
Didn't you want to respond to what
I'm very sorry that she's abandoned the faith of her fathers. She's now like a ship on a stormy, dark sea without a pole star to guide her, without a rudder. She doesn't know where she's going or what she's doing, and very shortly now she's going to die in the natural course of things. And the way she's doing now is it's going to split hell wide open. I'm her best friend. I'm the fag's best friend. I say repent, turn, or burn.
So where is Bobby now?
Her son?
Yes.
If what she has said is true and he died impenitent and without Jesus Christ, he's burning in hell now.
But
and there's no question about it. And he lift up his eyes being in torment in hell and seeth Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom and pleaded for a drop of water to touch his tongue, saying, I'm tormented in this flame. I believe in hell, Ricky.
Okay. Yes, Mary?
Really the catalyst for this was the fact that I was concerned that Bobby was probably burning in this lake of fire by this wrath of God that he knows. I read that because Bobby's a Christian, he won't be sent to hell. But then further back in Revelations, I believe it's Revelations 5:3, it says that if you don't overcome, your name will be blotted out of the book of life. And so then I read back a little bit more, and it says that if your name is not found in the book of life, you'll be cast in the lake of fire. And so that's when I decided to read this book and see what it was really all about.
Okay.
Bobby is not in hell.
Okay.
I don't think
she no longer believes the Bible.
Mary came with an excerpt from Bobby's diary in her lap. She came to honor her son. Fred used his return to the stage to desecrate Bobby's memory, all the while playing the victim. Do you remember what he said backstage?
So if you've got security here, some of those people look very dangerous to me.
I think we all know who the real danger was. And if you thought that rectum line was a one-off shock tactic.
Charles, I want to hear how you feel. You think God is an angry God. Why?
Well, because the Bible is full of verses which state exactly that.
My God is a loving, compassionate God.
You don't worship the one and true living God. Let me tell you what God you worship. You worship your... That's what you worship.
Nope.
These people hate God and worship the rectum. The rectum? Not a rectum. That sounds insane when you say that. Yeah. They worship that which they desire, that makes them feel good. It's an expression of the flesh.
14 years later, different face, same script. It wasn't a slip. It wasn't spontaneous. It was doctrine, almost certainly spewed forth from the pulpit. Steve Drain wasn't around in 1993. He only came to the church later. He was a filmmaker who visited the compound to create a documentary, critical of Westboro. But he was taken in by the message and moved his family from Florida to Topeka, Kansas. The only thing that Steve Drain and Charles Hockenbarger had in common is that they were devout followers of Saint Hate. Look, I'm not here to drag Ricki. She did the job. She stayed at her post, she held the line and didn't flinch. But memory is tricky, especially when it's soaked in trauma. The truth? Fred Phelps wasn't thrown out. He walked off when somebody dared to push back. Like I said, I'm not here to drag Ricki, but if we want to fight hate with integrity, we need to start with the facts, even the uncomfortable ones, because we can't rewrite history and expect to stay on the right side of it. So, much to unpack. The whole way through you were going, we need to talk about this, we need to talk about that, we need to talk about this. So let's start touching on those. First of all, the one thing you said is, yeah, of course he doubled down.
Yeah. So Fred is not one to back down, but I think also because Ricki Lake is a woman, and just a little bit rewind, Fred, one of his many achievements in his many things that he did in life is he was a Golden Gloves boxer.
Okay.
And what he eventually liked to do was use those fists to rectify the behavior of his wife and children.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, that's a nice, God-fearing approach to take.
Correct. He also used like wooden handles and leather belts and leather thongs and all sorts of. Okay, calm down. Yes. Not those. Those would have been fun. But so he liked to use what was around and his fists to punish. Also, like, bend his kids' backs over the pews until they felt like, calm down.
No.
But anyway, so he didn't like people talking back to him.
Yeah, this is clear.
Correct. So if someone is going, and again, cult leader 101, do as I say, and you cannot question me, because I am all knowing and all being, and the one true way to get to whichever deity they're going to get to, depending on the cult. So in this case, God. So you cannot question my authority, because I am all and everything. So if they're going to, he will double down.
Yeah. And yeah, the what amazes me is how people who really shouldn't have been influenced by him have been influenced by him. Steve Drain is a perfect example. The dude in the comments who said, and to think I used to have a problem with Fred Phelps, fine, enjoy your echo chamber, I'm out. Well, cheers. Thank you thanks for playing. But Steve Drain wasn't family.
No.
He arrived as a filmmaker who was actually there to make a critical documentary of Westboro Baptist Church, and then got sucked into the rhetoric. One thing something I didn't include in that video I put together is Louis through says to Steve Drain, before you came to Westboro, did you have a problem with homosexuals? And he went, no, I was an intelligent person. What?
Yes.
How do people willingly become stupid?
Okay. It's a little hard for me to call anyone that gets drawn into a cult stupid. Although you kind of want to, you kind of want, but you can't. Stupid example. There was this cult called Heaven's Gate. It was the spaceship cult, right?
I've heard about it, yes.
Now, there was a senator that joined. There were engineers and computer engineers. They were very, very intelligent people that joined, in essence, a spaceship cult. So, again, I think it depends on when and how the message hits. I mean, Steve Drain went there to make a mockumentary.
Okay.
And he wanted to basically do what Louis Theroux went on to do 3 times. But something during somewhere when he was talking to Fred must have clicked for him. And then again, a little thing clicks, and then another thing, and then another thing, and then slowly but surely you build the indoctrination until they're completely immersed in your doctrine.
So kind of like MAGA. Okay, never mind. Anybody who watches the channel knows that I have very little time for
things.
The rights, the right wings, unflinching devotion, no matter what. And I think that's why I would never cope in a cult, because I fucking question everything.
Yes, which is why they would never let you in. So, no, but again, cult leaders are, I mean, if they just use the stuff to do good. So they won't, if you are someone that pushes back, there's someone that asks a lot of questions, not even like in a forceful way, you just like question things and, you know, scratch where they shouldn't be scratched. They're usually happy to let those people go because those people are not going to toe the line. So no, you'd probably not be welcomed into a cult.
So I need to start my own, you saying?
Correct.
Okay. I want to show one last thing because I want to discuss Charles Hockenbarger.
Okay.
Now, that's the kid in the Ricki Lake interview. Jade, if you can just play the Charles Hockenbarger. No, the other one.
Then Charles wants to respond.
Answer the young lady over here. What do you do with Romans 9:13 that says, as it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I not disliked, not his sins disliked, but hated. He hated Esau, God hates. And to you, you have no room to talk about respect, talking to a 63-year-old man like a pig. You need to learn respect. This man has more wisdom and more intelligence than this room, everyone in this room combined.
All right, we're going to take another break. We'll be right back after this. Stay tuned.
When I heard that this man has more wisdom and whatever the hell, intelligence or whatever it is that he said, I was like, say what now?
Okay.
How does actually, Jade, could you just throw up the photo of him, please? What is he, 18, 19 there? And he's already so filled with hate and I don't get how somebody that young becomes that hateful. You can take it down, thanks.
Okay, so just remember I said to you there were 2 families that stayed when Fred did his great sermons. One of them was the Hockenbargers. So Charles was raised in the church. He was raised to hate. He was raised to see Fred as God.
They actually talk about this. If you could play the Charles family video.
You're missing the point. You are not listening to me. I'm asking you how many members are in your congregation. That's all. You're leading me to believe that it's just your children.
And why, pardon me, and why would you make, by implication, fun of people like Charles Hockenbarger, whose grandparents were members of our church, whose parents were our members since they were born, and who, with his 5 brothers and sisters, has never missed a Sunday. But it is
now our show.
So generational indoctrination.
It blows my mind to think, that young kid of Shirley's, I can't remember his name, but I look at him and go, you have such capacity for love, and you're going to grow up knowing only hate.
Yes.
That for me is the saddest thing of the whole Westboro Baptist Church, is the fact that most cults are hidden away behind closed doors, or up in the mountains making water, or and
Thanks for the reference.
But then you have Westboro, who is on street corners protesting military funerals and HIV-related funerals, and outside government buildings. And there was one article I read about the mayor of Topeka, and they were protesting outside her office, and a software engineer had to come into the building, and he had to walk through the protest, and he got in and he was shaking, and she said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "My kid committed suicide three weeks ago because he was gay." And he had nothing to do with running the city of Topeka. He was just a service provider to the mayor's office.
That's the thing about hate. You point it somewhere, but you don't know where else it's going to hit, right? Same thing with these cults. Like, they're so focused on hating a thing or worshipping a thing that there's a lot of things that fall through the cracks that really, really hurt people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, I think we can put a pin in this for now.
Okay.
Because I do want to come back, and I do want to actually look at Westboro post Ricki, post all that, and basically Westboro in the age of social media.
Okay.
That's because I find, like I said, it always fascinates me that they haven't kept away from social media. And spoiler alert, because this is something I do know, that's actually how Megan got out.
Yes.
She met a Jewish man, I think it was.
A gay Jewish
man on Twitter, of all places. And he opened her eyes.
Correct.
So I do want to discuss Westboro and the future of Westboro. Is there actually a future for Westboro in the modern age, provided America does the right thing in 2026 and 2028? Is there actually a space for places like Westboro, or will they end up being, will they breathe themselves out of existence? So yes, let's do that. If you enjoy the video, do all the YouTube things, and
like, subscribe, share.
That's the one.
You're welcome.
And you can help support the show on Patreon. You will be back in 2 weeks' time.
I shall.
And with a little bit of luck, you will be back every 2 weeks after that.
If you like me.
But thank you. I think we can wrap this up, and
awesome.
We'll see you in a fortnight. Cheers.